When a country goes through a profound crisis, the first thing people want and need are answers. Today, we're going deep inside the official report that tried to provide them, a document that had to explain the unthinkable. So let's go back to that day, October 29th, 2025. It was supposed to be an election day, a moment of democratic expression. Instead, it just exploded into widespread violent chaos. The entire country was left shaken, asking one single fundamental question. What in the world just happened? The first reports coming in just described protests, but what was actually unfolding was so much worse. We're talking about violence flaring up across 11 different regions of Tanzania, and it seemed to be happening all at once. It led to incredible destruction and, tragically, a major loss of life. And this, right here, became the central mystery. Were these just spontaneous protests that got out of hand, or was there something more organized, more sinister behind it all? The answer to that question would really determine everything, not just who was accountable, but the future stability of the entire nation. So, in the face of this crisis, and with the public demanding answers, President Samia Suluhu Hassan took a really decisive step. She created a presidential commission of inquiry. Their mission was simple but huge: conduct a thorough, fact-finding investigation into exactly what happened that day. Now, to make sure this was credible, the commission was stacked with some of the most respected figures in public service. We're talking about a former chief justice leading the whole thing, joined by a former head of the police, top civil servants, and senior diplomats. The message was clear: this investigation was going to be about facts and integrity, period. The goal was to find the unvarnished truth. After months of digging, the commission dropped its main finding. And honestly, it was a bombshell. They concluded that what happened on October 29th was not a protest. It was, in their words, a coordinated, funded, and armed insurgency. The report makes a really critical legal distinction here. Look, it fully acknowledges that peaceful protest is a protected right, but it labels the events of October 29th as ghasia, which is a Swahili word for violent riots, and it defines it as an organized push with a very clear goal: to create chaos and totally undermine the constitutional order. So this wasn't about voicing dissent, it was about pure disruption. And the evidence they laid out, it just paints this picture of a meticulously planned operation. The coordination alone was just staggering. Simultaneous attacks in over 200 separate locations. This was all fueled by money. People testified they were paid to be there. And the recruits weren't just random people showing up. They were actually housed and trained for weeks beforehand. And they came armed, not with protest signs, but with machetes, guns, and even explosives. The commission found the goal was unambiguous: stop the election and make the country completely ungovernable. And if you want to understand how something like this can even happen, just listen to this piece of testimony. A 16-year-old from Arusha told the commission he was paid 50,000 shillings. His words were, "They told me it was a deal that would get me out of poverty." That one sentence tells you so much about how vulnerability and economic desperation were weaponized to fuel all this violence. The commission's findings aren't just abstract legal points. No, they were measured in a devastating, real-world toll. Let's turn to the staggering human and economic price that was paid because of this coordinated violence. The human cost, it just starts with the number of lives lost. The commission confirmed 518 people were killed. That's 502 civilians and 16 security officers who never went home. And the suffering just ripples out from there. Almost 2,400 injuries were officially documented. That's thousands of people whose lives were completely changed forever by what happened that day. And then there's the physical destruction, which was just as massive. It left a financial wound of 125 billion Tanzanian shillings in damages to property, both public and private. I mean, that's just a massive blow to the nation's economy. So what happened is tragically clear, but the next really crucial question the commission tackled was why, right? Why was the country so vulnerable to this? What were the underlying issues that allowed this fire to even start? The commission used this really powerful analogy: fuel and spark. So think about the fuel as all the long-term problems that have been simmering for years. Massive youth unemployment, growing demands for a new constitution, the rising cost of living, and this general feeling that nobody was listening to the public's grievances. And then came the sparks, the things that lit that fuel on fire. We're talking a firestorm of social media incitement, inflammatory political slogans, arguments over party nominations, and a flood of coordinated disinformation that was designed to make people angry and get them to act. Okay, so understanding the causes is one thing, but the Commission's final, and maybe its most important job, was to lay out a path forward, a path built on accountability, on healing, and on making sure this can never, ever happen again. When she received the report, President Samia Suluhu Hassan offered this really powerful thought. She acknowledged the pain, but she framed it as a harsh but necessary lesson for the country. It really sets a tone not of despair, but of resilience, of being determined to find the right way forward. And here's the concrete plan the government announced. First, a criminal investigation to find and prosecute the people who masterminded all this. Second, a National Reconciliation Commission to start the incredibly hard work of healing these deep societal divides. Third, to use what they learned from that process to actually drive meaningful constitutional reform. And finally, and so importantly, providing direct support to the victims, funding medical care and assistance for all those who were injured. The report gives a roadmap for sure, but the journey ahead is obviously filled with challenges. Moving from that kind of trauma to trust is a long, hard road, and it raises a really profound question for all of us. How does a society actually recover and make sure that the fuel for a fire like this is never allowed to build up again? And that really brings us to the final powerful message from the president, a call to action, really, for the whole country. It's a declaration that the lessons from this tragedy have to be forged into a collective promise, a commitment from every single citizen to make sure that a dark chapter like this is never, ever repeated.